With the NBA season upon us, the long-awaited emergence of Zion Williamson is just around the corner. And as the most hyped up talent since LeBron James, it's near impossible to avoid the attention surrounding him. The good and the bad. But is the good justified, and is the bad an accurate assessment of what is to come? I mean, it's not an exaggeration to say that Zion is possibly the most anticipated rookie to ever enter the league. And honestly, this has got to stop. Last week, ESPN released their top 100 players of the 2020 NBA season. And immediately, most NBA fans with a shred of knowledge and intellect threw that list in the trash. To give you an idea of what we're dealing with, ESPN ranked Zach LaVine, one of the NBA's brightest young talents, lower than a 19-year-old Jaren Jackson Jr. coming off of his rookie season. They also had Andre Drummond ranked lower than Jaylen Brown. Drummond is a two-time All-Star and just wrapped up the best season of his career. Brown is a part-time starter who just saw regression in his third season in the league. Two vastly different players with different roles, but Drummond being objectively the more productive and more valuable player. Now, I don't want to pick on Jackson and Brown. They are both good young players with potential. It's not their fault ESPN can't rank accurately. But it's stuff like this that make ESPN's list lose its credibility. To add to the confusion, ESPN ranked DeMar DeRozan at 46 and Klay Thompson at 49. Klay Thompson, 49. 60 points in 3 quarters, 49. Most three-pointers in a game, 49. 3-time NBA champion, 49. Now, this may be because Klay Thompson is coming off an injury. Nonetheless, they have the man at 49 if you didn't hear me the first 5 times. But if that wasn't suspect enough, they ranked Zion Williamson, a 19-year-old kid who hasn't played a single NBA game in his life, as the 42nd best player in the league. This is absurd. It's not fair to established players in the league, it's not necessarily accurate, and it's not fair to Zion. In the 9 years ESPN has been doing these preseason player rankings, Zion is ranked higher than any rookie before him. ESPN says, that's understandable given Zion is one of the most promising players to enter the league in recent memory. Which actually makes sense. The list of number 1 overall draft picks over the last 9 seasons is pretty underwhelming. As of right now, Anthony Bennett is the biggest bust in NBA history, Markelle Fultz forgot how to shoot a basketball, Kyrie Irving played just 11 games in college, and DeAndre Ayton and Karl Anthony Towns were both solid first overall picks but weren't all that hyped up coming out of college. At least not to the extent of these other 4 players. But how accurate is it for ESPN and basketball fans in general to say that Zion Williamson is a better prospect than, let's say, Anthony Davis was? Davis led Kentucky to an NCAA champion, won NCAA tournament MVP to go along with his Wooden Award given to the most outstanding player of the year and the Naismith Player of the Year award. He's also regarded as arguably the greatest one-and-done player in college basketball history. If all of this warrants a ranking as the 62nd best player in the NBA as a rookie, what warrants Zion's ranking at 42nd? Among the weaknesses in Zion's game, some of the more glaring holes are his lack of true shooting or his inability to score anywhere other than right underneath the basket. Also his lack of skills, things like ball handling, passing, and again, an established shooting touch. And of course his size, which tends to be the biggest knock people have on him. Too short to play the power forward, too heavy to handle the vicious physical demands of an NBA season. Concerns about his weight have run rampant this entire offseason, and when you play the way Zion does, it's only a matter of time before that frame starts to fall apart on itself. It would be interesting to see how exactly Zion's stature compares to his fellow NBA players. I mean, he can't be that much of an outlier, right? Well, we could just make a chart of every single NBA player and find out. It would take a while, but be a really cool graphic and you'd probably learn a lot. No. Nope, I don't want to do that. Don't want to do it. Not gonna do it. I won't do it. I mean, seriously, who has the time to just take every single player and put them on a graph? Here's a chart of every single player in the NBA, their height and their weight. As you can see, nearly every player falls within this zone, a healthy balance between height and weight. All the way from Isaiah Thomas to Chris Paul, Stephen Curry, here's Devin Booker, here's LeBron James. Towards the top, you can see Giannis and AD. And all the way at the top, you have Boban Marjanovic, or however the hell you say his name. Every single active player in the NBA, all 530 of them in one chart. And as you can see, as I spoke about before, there is a glaring trend going on here. This region would be considered a normal height to weight ratio for NBA players. And it includes every single player in the NBA, all the way from 5'9", 185-pound Isaiah Thomas to 7'3", 290-pound Boban. Every single active NBA player fits within this region. Well, not all of them. Yeah. When people say Zion does not have a conventional basketball frame, they ain't lying. And whether you like the kid or not, these are all valid points. If history tells us anything, it's that these types of players do not transition well into the NBA. Playing faster, bigger, and higher than your fellow college peers is vastly easier than doing so against the best big men in the world. So I'll ask you, does Zion's ability to play above the rim overshadow the fact that he lacks many qualities in a true dominant player? Well, what if I told you that Zion doesn't lack the skills needed to completely dominate the league? What if I told you his build is not a detriment, but in fact his greatest ally? What if I told you that the hype surrounding Zion is 100% warranted and there are numbers to back it up? Last season, Zion made his college basketball debut and immediately showed the world he was the real deal. But if you only watched his highlights, you would think all he could do is dunk and play bully ball. And of course, when it comes to his critics, this is their go-to argument. But if you actually watched his games and looked at the numbers, you would realize that there is a reason why he has been anointed as the next guy up. There's the obvious freakish athleticism and build that seem to defy all laws of physics. There's the dunks that inevitably end up on SportsCenter, but there is so much more than just that. So let's start with his defense, the most underrated aspect of Zion's game. Last year as a forward, Zion led the ACC in steals, made the all-conference defensive team, and displayed his incredible defensive gifts all season long. Because if there's one thing Zion has shown to be elite at, it's his ability to use his athleticism to propel his game to another level. For example, not often do people talk about his quickness, his ability to guard all 5 positions and apply pressure at any spot on defense. We are talking about a kid that can go 2 feet above the rim to block a shot in one possession, then come down, guard the quickest guy on the court, and pick his pocket in the next possession. Highlights will only show you the absurd dunk he throws down, but it won't show you the savvy defensive play Zion had on the other end of the court to start the fast break. Now, some may fault him on the fact that most of his buckets come from bully ball underneath the basket, but when 70% of your shots are going in, why fall back on anything else? See, Zion's athleticism doesn't stop with his explosiveness. His body control and timing are second to none. And although these may look like easy buckets, Williamson has a knack for putting himself in spots and positions where he thrives best. We saw this a lot in Dennis Rodman and more recently Draymond Green. Undersized post forwards who use their motor and their IQ to out-rebound, out-hustle, and outplay their opponent. The more I watch him play, the more I see this elevated basketball IQ at work. It's this IQ that allows him to use his strengths to his advantage and keep his weaknesses to a minimum. This has allowed Zion to rack up the highest effective field goal percentage in the entire NCAA last season, along with the highest player efficiency rating and the highest box plus minus and the highest 2-point field goal percentage in NCAA history. See, he may not grab the most rebounds, he may not score the most points, But when he is on the court, he not only shifts the entire gravity of the game, he is statistically by far the best player out there. Back to the Anthony Davis comparison, here are AD's numbers in his one and only season at Kentucky. Again, considered as possibly the greatest one and done in college basketball history. And here's Zion's numbers from this past season at Duke. Really puts things into perspective. You'll often hear people compare Zion to LeBron James, but this comparison doesn't make much sense at all. Different skill sets, different mindsets, and different frames. So instead, here are the college numbers of two players that I feel have a more similar skill set and play style to Zion. Any guesses as to who these players are? One is a former NBA MVP, and the other is a former Naismith Player of the Year and two-time All-Star. The first player is Charles Barkley, and the second is Larry Johnson. Two players that had wildly successful college careers that translated effortlessly into the NBA. In fact, Barkley made a Hall of Fame career out of being an undersized big man who could put the ball in the hoop at will while out-rebounding everyone else. And Larry Johnson, before his injuries ensued, became an all-star in just his second season in the league, purely off of his tenacity and athleticism. Two players with similar frames and play styles to Zion. Which leads me into my next point, injuries. Because when you play as fast, high, and big as Zion, injuries become a serious concern. In the case of Larry Johnson, injuries were the beginning of the end. But if Zion can avoid catastrophe and stay on the court, it is clear that he has all of the tools to be a world-class player. Another big concern regarding Zion's game is his shooting or lack thereof. But again, when you look at the numbers, this isn't the case. When he has the opportunity to, Zion shoots the ball at an average rate. Considering his usage and the fact that he's a 285-pound above-the-rim power forward, this is far from the narrative we've been given. If we look at a graph of box plus minus and player efficiency for the best college players in the country last season, you'll see that Zion is floating out on his own little island, completely alone and on a different level than his peers. So, in terms of hype, is it really justified? What kind of individual numbers would Zion have to put up for his rookie season to be considered a success? 15, 8, and 5? What about 20, 10, and 5? 25, 12, and 4? What if Zion averaged 18, 10, and 2 next season on 54% shooting? I'm not sure how many people would consider that an outstanding year in terms of Zion standards. Yet, these are the numbers Karl Anthony Towns put up as a rookie on his way to earning Rookie of the Year. In fact, Cat's rookie season was so impressive that he won the award by unanimous decision. He was head and shoulders above his peers. And yet, if Zion averaged 18, 10, and 2 next season, fans around the NBA would probably say they were expecting more out of him, despite the fact that these are near all-star numbers. In fact, here are rookie numbers from the last 10 big men to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. Numbers that are all completely within reach for Williamson. Is Zion the next LeBron? The next Charles Barkley? What about the next Larry Johnson? Or is he the first and only Zion Williamson? Putting these incredible, nearly untouchable labels on this kid is just a recipe for disaster. But for a 19-year-old kid with the world on his shoulders, I think he'll do just fine. Hope you all enjoyed, and as always, until next time.